You're listening to a Talk 49 interview. I'm Nigel A. James. My guest this morning is Susanne Kannenberg from Hanover in Germany. And Susanne grew up in the German Democratic Republic. And she's going to talk to us about her childhood in the German Democratic Republic. Susanne Kannenberg, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Nice to be here.
We've got an interesting topic, your childhood in the German Democratic Republic. Very briefly, just describe this childhood. Was it happy? Was it sad? Was it hard? Just give us a picture very much in general.
Actually, I think my childhood was mostly a happy one, and it was a careless one. So it was very safe. We had a very low criminality rate. And as a child, I had freedoms that nowadays children don't have anymore. I could run around freely, roam in the forest or wherever, and nobody cared. And you pretty much could do anything you want.
Okay. Our childhoods generally begin when we start going to school, if you understand what I mean. How was school when you were a child in the German Democratic Republic?
School was pretty uniform all over East Germany. So it generally started at September 1st. So the whole country, the first graders came to school at September 1st. And it's a huge celebration to get into school. I think more like a German thing that it is celebrated so big, and children are rewarded with sugar cones filled with goods, toys, and whatever you need for your start in school. So it's really a big thing.
Was that what happened to you when you started school? You got this big sugar cone and...
I did, yeah. And the whole family was coming from all over the country to celebrate with me. So it was really a big thing.
And how well do you remember your teacher in the elementary school?
Yeah, I remember pretty well. She was teaching all subjects, so we had almost no differentiation. And we had one subject which is, I think, unlikely to the subject Western kids have. It was the so-called Pioneer Hour.
Oh, talk to us about the Pioneer Hour. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, every school had a so-called pioneer leader. So this was the representative of the pioneer organization. And every child that was taken into the pioneer organization, which I think around 90% were part of this organization. And if you were Christian, you were not allowed, or if your parents didn't want it. And this person had an extra hour per week with us, talking about being a pioneer and what the duty of a pioneer is, and something like that. And we mostly made posters in that lesson about certain topics which were related to my hometown, Dresden.
And did you become a pioneer?
Yes, I was.
Tell us about this pioneer movement, because there's nothing like it anywhere else. And tell us about the uniform you had to wear and the activities you had and things like this.
Yeah. So I think 1 or 2 weeks after we came to school, we were taken into the pioneer organization in a festive ceremony. And usually there were 2 steps within the pioneer organization. Grades 1 to 3 were the so-called young pioneers. And then grades 4 to 7 were tailman pioneers. So they didn't have the blue scarf like the young pioneers had. They had a red scarf.
Okay.
And then you became part of the Free German Youth from grade 8 on, FDJ, and they had a blue blouse, but no scarf.
Okay. What sort of activities did you do with the pioneers? It wasn't just 1 hour a week, I'm sure. Tell us a little bit more about these activities.
We had so-called pioneer meetings after school, which were self-organized by the children. And then we were deciding whether we wanted to go somewhere, like collect old paper and old glass to raise money. And then we were deciding what to do with the money. For example, finance the next class trip, or help elderly people with doing groceries or carrying coal. The coal was usually stored in the cellar, and so it was really hard for old people to carry up the coal into their flats, and we helped with that. So, in my child's perspective, it made a lot of sense what we were doing.
Of course.
It's called community service.
Of course. And you were doing it with other children, other young pioneers. So it was a very social thing as well, wasn't it?
It was, definitely.
What sort of sports did the young pioneers, what sort of sports were organised for you, or what did you organise?
I think it was not a pioneer thing that every kid or every class was assigned to the so-called Children's Olympics.
Okay, tell us about this.
So it was once a year, and the schools picked up local places where they put up some kind of tournament. And in our case, it was like running, so sprint and also field.
Okay. And what were you best in? Which sprinting?
I totally sucked at sports.
Okay. I believe that, yeah. So
I was more the crafter. I was making the nice posters.
Oh, really? So you're a very creative person. And what sort of role did art play in a sense of creating art as a young child at school, young pioneer?
I think it was supported, same as sports. And those kind of posters were on public display in the school. So every student could see it. And of course, the pioneer group took pride in making the poster very beautiful, very professionally looking. And that's why, for example, because we had almost no child owned an own camera or had a means to develop photos or anything like that. So we had to paint what we saw. For example, if we were reporting a trip about the Pioneer Railway in Dresden, this is something I can talk about to explain what it is. Then I was painting the trains, for example.
You were painting the trains?
Yes. So I made pictures of the trains by hand.
How fantastic. Well, what sort of trains were they? Steam trains or electric trains or?
Both. The Pioneer Railway in Dresden is a special thing. I think it's only existing in the eastern countries.
Okay.
And the idea was, because Dresden was so heavily destroyed in World War II, that the kids had something funny, something to distract them from all the ruins and the suffering. And so after they cleaned out all the rubble out of the inner city, they used those railways that were meant to carry the rubble outside, repainted them, and these trains were operated by pioneers. it was a huge honor to be, for example, the train driver or something. And it was going through the biggest park in Dresden, the Großer Garten. And there were large tracks for those trains, and there was a steam train, there was an electrical train, and with little open wagons that were pulled. This railway still exists today. It's not called the Pioneer Railway anymore, but you can still go by it, and it's always fun.
How fantastic. And of course, having fun was important. Well, what sort of events did the pioneers organise for the summer? Did you have summer camps for the children or anything like this?
There certainly were some, but I never attended.
Do you know anybody who did?
I think one guy of my class with a single mother. He was sent to a pioneer camp just because she couldn't take care of him in the summer. But he never really told anything about it. But there was a pioneer village next to Berlin.
Oh, tell us about this.
And so it is, Berlin is a little village. I think it's north of Berlin.
Okay.
And at a lake, the Berlin Lake, and this settlement was built up for pioneers, and only the best of the best were sent there. And it was never a topic in my family. I found out afterwards that this settlement existed, and I was more like a chaotic child. I forgot a lot of stuff. Losing keys was one of the worst things I did, and that's why I was never even close to being nominated to go, because a young pioneer is not as messy.
Okay, so you were a messy young pioneer.
I was.
But you had lots and lots of fun with the pioneers, it seems.
Yes, and they were part of my daily life, just like my family.
That's an interesting point, daily life. How did you get on when you were a child with enough to eat and stuff like this? Was there always plenty to eat, or as a child, did you even think about this?
Actually, yes, it was a topic, because Dresden has a lot of industry, but the food situation was not so good. Like, you could buy stuff in Berlin, for example, that we had never seen in Dresden.
Okay.
So it was really when we were going to the supermarket, which was called Konsum at that time,
Okay.
that you could see empty shelves, and you just bought what was still available, and you improvised with this. For example, when I was 5, my parents sent me to do grocery shopping for the first time, because being independent was very important in Eastern Germany. And I was assigned to buy yogurt and cream. And and the yogurt was empty. There was nothing anymore. And that's why I bought the amount of cream that I was supposed to buy yogurt.
Okay.
And when I came home, my mom was just, oh my God, what shall we do with all the amounts of cream you bought? So the whole week was consisting of any meal with cream inside, like desserts, potatoes and cream and whatsoever.
Okay.
Just to get it empty and to use it up. But my parents were not angry at me, because for them, they understood the logic behind it. And I think this is one of the main skills you develop when you were growing up in an Eastern country with a not a good food situation, to improvise.
Of course. And then what about the clothes you wore? Could you get clothes quite easily, or was this a challenge as well?
Yeah, no, not really. Fashion was not so important for us as children, because it was very common that you had to wear the clothes of your elderly siblings once they were grown out of it, and they were mended somehow, and then you got them. And it was also common to change in the circle of friends that, for example, my mom exchanged children's clothes with her friends. So I got also to wear clothes of their children.
Sure.
It was quite common practice, so no one really gave a thought about it.
What about the bigger family picture, weddings and funerals and things? How often did you meet your aunties, uncles, cousins? And tell us a little bit about this.
Actually, we lived in the same house with my maternal grandparents. So it was a single family home, but there were two families living inside of it because my parents would have never had the chance to get a flat. The flats were given by the state, and they said, oh no, in this house there's enough space for you, so you won't get anything. And that's why we were living basically in the same house with my grandparents, and they just made some rooms empty so we could live in it.
And did it work okay? Were you good friends with your grandparents?
Yeah, and it was really nice to have my grandparents with me.
And that's an interesting question. You lived in a sort of extended family in a way. What about things like Christmas, Easter, and these fixed points in the year? What was celebrated in the German Democratic Republic? Tell us just a little bit about this. It's interesting.
We celebrated the normal celebration days like Easter and Christmas, definitely. Not with the Christian traditions around that you go to church and follow the service or something. That was not existent. But we also had May 1st. So Workers' Day was a big thing. Usually people were expected to go to on a big march through the city and with little flags, paper flags, with GDR flag and the pigeon of peace. I don't know how it's called.
Yes.
And symbols like that, and demonstrate. I think for the adults it was boring, and they would have wanted to spend their free time otherwise. But for us kids, it was exciting.
So you had an exciting time. What about entertainment in the way of cinemas, theatre, and these kind of things? Tell us, fill us in a little bit about this.
Actually, Dresden is also called the Valley of the Clueless. So, due to geographical conditions, we didn't have any Western television or radio broadcasting, so there was only the two GDR television channels, DDR1 and DDR2.
Okay.
So watching television was not that attractive to me.
I'm sure, but did you go to the cinema? Did you go to the theatre?
Yes, we did. We went to the cinema with the school, we went with the Pioneer Group, and we also went privately. And East Germany had great children's movies. They really, and at that time, really the very renowned actors also did children's movies.
Okay.
Today, it's seen as a lack of career, or that your career is declining when you do children's movies. And that time, it was an honorable thing to also act in a children's movie, and they were really nice and funny. And so it was really a good thing to go to cinema. And we had a cinema about 1 hour walk away.
Okay.
So it was always for me a big event to go to the cinema.
Brilliant. And who did you go to the cinema with? Friends or with your parents or on your own?
Actually, mostly with my sister.
Oh, your sister, okay.
Mhm.
And so your sister, she was a young pioneer too, I would imagine.
Yes.
So you had a great,
Um,
childhood.
yes. Overall, I would say yes. It was really nice.
And would you say the biggest difference between a Western childhood and, let's say, Eastern childhood was the young pioneers in this organisation?
Probably yes, but as a child, it didn't. I never felt like this is a political thing,
Of course.
and they are indoctrinating me because I mean you have no comparison. You can't reflect upon it. But I think what I see nowadays, how children grow up, I think the biggest difference we had was the freedom.
Okay, yeah, between now and then, yes, yes.
Yes, I'm living across a school, and I see every morning the kids are being brought to school by car, also the fourth grader. No, almost no kids is walking on its own, and afterwards the parents are waiting in front of the school to pick up their children again. And this is really odd to me because in my generation, children already in kindergarten, when the flag was closed, they walked home by themselves. They had a key called key kit, Schlüsselkinder.
Yes, yes.
Usually you had a little bag hanging around your neck with the key inside. And this ensured you that you could unlock your door and just get home on your own.
So you had a very independent childhood in a way.
Yes.
That's a great way of putting it. But of course, how was it going up from the young pioneers to the next group of pioneers? You know, when you became a third in the third class, I think you said, and you got you got a different colour scarf and stuff.
Actually, I didn't because the German reunion was before.
Oh, really? And
Yeah.
So your pioneer, let's say, time was cut short because of this, and that's a very good question. How was it for people, as far as you can remember, waking up one morning and not having a country anymore?
I think it was a process. So we children, we sensed the insecurity of the adults. So you could feel there's something going on, even if you couldn't quite grasp what it was, but you could definitely feel it. And also the crumbling of everything, your own culture, your values, the whole infrastructure around you. That, for example, the food shops were closed. From one day to another, there was no replacement for a long time. So you were really looking like, where can I buy my food nowadays? Mm-hmm. And stuff, parents losing jobs and stuff. So it was really quite insecure time. And I would say it had a huge impact on me and also on my family because my parents both lost their jobs. And my mom made a decision because she is, let's say, for Western conditions, untypically qualified. My mom is a physicist, so she has a higher educational level than my dad has. And on the West German work market or labor market, women over 40 with children in a natural scientific domain were no use on the work market. So they said, yeah, you basically had no chance.
So what happened?
Mom decided to apply over whole Germany, and she ended up near Stuttgart.
Okay.
So when I was 9, she left to work in the West, and she got a job in Dresden half a year before I made my A-levels. So she was away 9 years.
So this was a big split in family life, wasn't it, somehow?
Yeah. She was coming home on weekends, being terribly distressed after a week and after the long train ride. And it was quite stressful time for all of us. And my grandpa had died already. My grandma was sick, so she needed care too. So she was no support for my dad. My dad had somehow to deal with his children, with an absent wife and an old mother-in-law.
And from your point of view, how did school change? Because you talk about finishing A levels and stuff, but did school change completely as well?
Yes, very drastic changes. East Germany had a unified school system, so every child was learning from grade 1 to 10, and it split up afterwards. So after 10th grade, you could do the on-job training, and the best were selected to go to further education in the so-called erweiterte Oberschule, and they could do their A-levels. And suddenly the whole system changed, and it became way more selective. The teacher had the job before to make sure that the child can follow. For example, when I was in the first grade, my teacher visited at home to check if I have the conditions to learn and work properly.
Okay.
At home. So do I have a desk? Is there a quiet situation to do homework and something like this? And the teacher gave advice to the parents how to create that setting that was necessary, and teacher had a lot of authority in East Germany. And it all changed in that way that I think teachers were also insecure. Some were fired because of Stasi past or something like this. And it became so much selective that they also told us, okay, if you are not having good enough grades, we won't let you go to gymnasium. And it was a quite insecure time also economically. So people were also afraid that if I don't go to gymnasium, I will never have a chance on a work market later, and children were experiencing the unemployment of their parents. So we had some, let's say, existential pressure suddenly. And I think a child in that age shouldn't have that.
Of course, yes, of course. So to sum up your childhood, it was split between a happy half and a very stressful half somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you think back, if you think back, do you miss the German Democratic Republic now? Do you think back and think it was a great time? Or tell us what you feel about this.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. What I really miss and what is really sad that children don't have that right now is really the safety to grow up.
Sure.
And that adults trust them to be able to do things on their own. So it was really common that kids were having chores at home in a young age already, go grocery shopping or something like this and contribute to the family. And nowadays, it is really like you can see it in books, you can see it in children television series and stuff like that, that people don't think children can do anything on their own.
Okay, that's what it's like now. But let's just stay a little bit in the past.
Yeah.
Well, when you think back, what are the good points you miss?
I think I also miss the feeling of community. Of course, because of the lack of goods, people had to work together and to cooperate in another way than it is today. And So it was not common to wait until somebody fixed something. If you could do it on yourself, if you could find the materials, you just fix it.
So it was very much do it yourself and...
Yes.
Okay.
And it was common to do it with your neighbors.
So there was a sort
self-organized.
A lot of support amongst the community for each other.
Yes.
Well, before we finish, is there anything else that we should have spoken about that we didn't speak about?
Yes, I think one interesting aspect that is mostly unknown is that due to the fact that the state owned pretty much all factories, they had a chance to conduct cultural programs for their workers. And it was really politically wanted to, how can I say, to give the workers chance to express themselves artistically. My dad, for example, was involved in the workers' opera in his factory, and they went on tour. So they did theater plays for children. And once I was allowed to join them when they went on tour. And that's why I probably have more opera knowledge than other people in my age group. Just from that time. So I had a lot of access to culture and easy access to culture.
So because of things like this, the German Democratic Republic was a completely different world from the West.
Yes.
And is this one of the points you miss as well?
I think having access to culture independently from how much money your parents have is really an asset we lost.
Okay.
And which I'm very sorry about.
Sure. And of course, your children, your nieces, your nephews, they can never go to the Young Pioneers because they just don't exist, do they?
Yes, but actually they also don't have the pressure to do so. That, for example, some of my classmates who were Christians, they were not allowed into the pioneer organization because of the parents didn't want it, and they always had to stand in the last line.
Sure.
And we had the so-called Fahnenappell or something. The pioneers with the nice uniforms were in the first row, and the Christian kids were in the last row. And there was also exclusion mechanisms and a huge pressure on people who did not go with the stream. And so I'm glad at that point that my nephews and nieces don't have to experience that.
Okay, so this pressure doesn't exist anymore. But the whole German Democratic Republic doesn't exist either. It's an incredibly big change. But just to sum it up, you had half a happy childhood and half a non-happy childhood.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I mean, I was very young when German reunification happened, and I don't know how my way further in the East German system would have been if it was so happy or if there were conflicts. Because from my later stages in life, I know that I have problems with authority.
Do you?
In a way that I don't want to be
told what to do.
Someone else determines me what to do. And I think it's also a result of that time because, for example, teachers were very powerful.
Yeah.
And it was expected from you as a child to obey, to do what you were told to do.
Okay.
And
so
this is something I always like to question.
Okay, but this is a discipline, imposed discipline. But of course, we're never going to find out how life would have carried on because it's just changed completely. But I think we've covered about everything, at least for this interview. Maybe we can talk a bit more about this another time, Susanne. But in the meantime, if there's nothing we've really forgotten, I say Thank you very much for a really incredibly interesting half hour. And let's talk again soon and expand this topic a little bit more. Why not?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Susanne Kannenberg from Hanover in Germany, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
See you.